Overtime was created by Matt Holman, founder of the EMW Foundation, and is made possible by the Prodigy Media Group and RPM Athlete Performance, with inspirational credit to my friend, Dr. Fred Opie. Welcome to Overtime, an open conversation series on racism in the sport of lacrosse. We hope you find this thought-provoking, educational, and it leaves you better prepared as a member of the lacrosse community. Thanks again for joining us, and now for this week's panel. Welcome to tonight's episode of Overtime, and we have some returning panelists and a couple of new ones, and we'll start with our new guests. First, we have Karen Silcott, Syracuse grad, and I apologize because I didn't write down her high school that she's currently coaching at, but she is a board member of Oakland Lacrosse and also the Northern California Junior Lacrosse Association, if I said that right. Karen, right?
Our club's a member of it.
And your club's a member of it.
Yeah, I'm on a committee for the NCJLA.
NCJLA, I got it right. And then also new this week is Tia Schindler. She was a 2013 player, and I gotta say this right. Haudenosaunee? I knew I wasn't going to get it right. I've been practicing for an hour. I've been trying this for years. Okay. And it's not funny.
It's Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee. Haudenosaunee. Oh, I forgot the note. I tried to spell it out like
phonetically,
and if I spell it wrong phonetically, then you get it wrong. So that's my problem. And then we welcome back Kayla Treanor, from Syracuse and BC coach. Maria's not here. Jessica Morgan is joining us shortly. Daniella Eppler, Virginia grad and Team Mexico player coach. And who am I missing? What's it? Oh, Mira. I almost forgot Mira.
Sniffle sob.
Michigan grad and current goalie coach at Harvard. So welcome, ladies. You know, what have you been talking about racism wise with your friend groups the last 3 to 4 weeks? Especially Kayla, I'm curious about you and Daniella, what kind of conversations, and Mira, you've had since we last spoke 3 to 4 weeks ago. Like what has this kind of spurred you to do?
Is that a question? Or
yeah.
Is that a statement?
It's what have you been inspired to do after participating in these conversations? That's the question.
All right. I mean, I guess I can start. I guess just listening to all these conversations while I have been exposed to many different issues that have been, you know, of surrounding race and diversity, I realized how little I know about the facts of how the history of all these issues and how they originated. And I've been trying to get more educated on that so that I am able to better explain myself and have better arguments when I'm having conversations with people and you know, really know what I'm talking about versus just making inferences. And, you know, people don't usually listen to you when you don't really know the facts. So I've been just trying to get myself more educated on different issues.
I can go next again.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say in the past couple of weeks from last time that we're on this last call, overtime call, I feel like in the beginning it was like kind of a realization and sort of like a lot of people talking about this and like what's really happening. Like it was an open dialogue, an open conversation for some of the first times for so many of us. And so it's taken a lot to listen and learn and understand. And you know, for me personally, like trying my best to listen and actually, you know, be a part of the conversations, but not take up the conversation. And So I think now in the past couple of weeks, it's been like, okay, now what can we do? How can we improve our game? How can we make actual change in lacrosse? And, you know, it's not easy, and there's a lot of conversation about it. And I think that's kind of where we're at now, though, is, okay, now what are we going to do about, like, what are we going to do about what, for me, I've been thinking like, okay, I don't want to just talk about it. I want to be about it. I want to figure out how can I help? What can we change? So I feel like that's kind of where, at least for me, how it's been shifting in the past couple of weeks.
Forgot to unmute myself. Go ahead, Mira. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
No, you're good. Yeah, I think I definitely resonate with that, Kayla. I think before it was more of like my white friends being like, oh, damn, she feels this way. And now I'm like trying to be really actionable with it and speak from my biracial and Black perspective. I've been doing some crazy chalk art out here in Princeton, New Jersey. So that's been my like one, like, power to the protest, power to the people. But like honestly educating my neighborhood because, you know, we have a person that might lean more towards the right that does chalk art out here. So just trying to educate through that and like actionable things that people can read. Yeah, and just like I think it's great to have conversations, but I think also before I kind of was like, oh, you just said something totally racist to me, and I just like either didn't realize it in the moment or let it float over. And I think that was my own kind of like passive way of dealing with it emotionally. But at this point, emotionally, I'm just like, I'm going to nip this right where it is and kind of call it out for what it is, as in a racist remark. So yeah, I think I'm kind of moving past like this passive, innocent, biracial person that's like, oh, you probably didn't mean it, to be like, well, you probably did. But then like, here's where we pivot and here's where you learn as my, you know, white cohort.
Yeah, and that's something that seems to come up in every discussion is that people of color are just, I don't want to say you let it go, but you just kind of ignore slights in those comments. And it's good to hear that you're kind of turning that around to more of a positive thing to say, hold on here, you know, let's stop and have a quick conversation about that. Karen or Tia, what have your conversations been like within the last 2 months with all that's going on in your lives and what's going on in the country? Karen, I'll start with you.
Well, our conversations have been brutal for me. We can start with my name is Karen. That alone is a problem right now. But like all kidding aside, I'm biracial. I kind of growing up struggled with what am I? People have told me I'm not Black enough to have, this opinion, or, there's been a little bit of that as I was younger. Now I'm kind of more self-aware and I have the confidence to tell people where to go. But I'm 40. Like it took me a long time to get there. And then the other piece is my brother's a police officer. I have two brothers who are police officers, one in New York City and one in Washington, D.C. And my father's a retired cop and he's the white guy in our family. So the intersection that I'm at as a biracial woman, daughter of a cop, raising a mixed race baby, every conversation hurts me. Every side of the argument all over is a painful conversation every day. And then like as time goes, I think some people are able to forget and they can go to their lake house or they can go and they can get their escape. And me and my family, we never get our escape, and like an example in the lacrosse world, any lacrosse player knows what's going on with like the Haudenosaunee and World Games and all that stuff. So it's just another piece of the conversation and discrimination and being left out and the haves and have-nots. So for me, it's just been like a never-ending, painful discussion that my son now asks why we curse so much. And he goes, why do we say bullshit so much, is what he said. He's 7.
You're filling up that swear jar, huh?
So we'll check that.
Yeah.
And then the call, there's been a lot of calls to action for both me and my husband. So, I'm on a couple of task force, and after everyone's had a chance to speak, I'd really love some help with one of the issues that I'm dealing with. And I have another call right after this. So I'd love some opinions from somebody that I'm not married to.
Tia, what are your thoughts on the last few months for you?
Just everything Karen said. I'm in the same boat. I have a husband too that's very involved in lacrosse, so and kids, so I get you. And I'm also almost 42, so for me, the racial thing, being Native, has always been there. Like you hear everything, even watching games and going to other communities and playing, especially when you're playing on an all-Native team, and the unfair reffing and everything like that. So kind of like what Karen said, you just kind of get used to it, and it doesn't really bother you. Almost, you become like desensitized to anything, like there isn't anything that I haven't heard derogatory towards Native people in my life. So now it's like, really? That's old. Come on. You know what I mean? Like I'm to that point now. I think the thing that's kind of affected me the most and the hardest, both my husband and I now, is having our children play, and, like having to explain to our children about, why this is the way it is and why people say the things they do. And we've taught them to be very proud of who they are. And, so a few years ago, my daughter stepped out of her comfort zone and tried out for a team where there was no Natives on the team. So she was the only Native girl on the team, and a lot of these girls hadn't even been around, a Native person before. So she kind of got a lot of the questions, like, do you live in teepees? Do you ride horses? All these questions. And she would say, no, I don't, or no, I don't, and her maturity at 13 was like, it's almost like she felt, and she told me that, she goes, Mom, if I don't tell them, then they're not going to know. So that's kind of at her age and her maturity, that's where she was at. So anytime we get a chance, we love sharing our culture, and we, share our experiences and things like that. So also another funny thing is, like I said, like she's always played on all Native teams, and the reffing, like we always feel like we've gotten unfair reffing, and it's, we're a little aggressive, but we feel like it's always been unfair. You know what I mean? Like we're watching, no offense, Kayla, we're watching Canada and US do the same thing that we're doing. And just because we're in a lower bracket with countries that aren't as developed, we kind of get a bad rap. And it's kind of like that, in our communities too. So when my daughter's playing on this, all white team, she's the people are yelling at the refs, and me and her are like, why are you yelling at the refs? Like, this is actually a fair called game. You know what I mean? Because we're used to 4 meters behind. Like we learn early, we learn really early what 4 meters behind were. So, so that's just kind of, I think it's a lot different when you're raising children. It's a lot tougher to handle and to control your emotions than when you're an actual player experiencing it, an individual experiencing it yourself. So I'm glad this conversation has come up, because we have a lot of issues too. In Canada, we have the missing and murdered Indigenous women that, that's always been a constant thing here. So up in Canada here, a lot of the racial stuff is geared towards Natives and Native people, and the brutality and everything like that. So it's hard, raising, little brown kids in a world where, like they're always going to be seen as, a troublemaker or whatever, even though we're raising our kids to be really excellent human beings, and we come from a great traditional family and everything like that too. So definitely harder when you become a mom or a parent to navigate through, through this world. So
that is, you really hit on a couple of subjects that gave me chills there. But it's true. I mean, if it doesn't, you got problems. You are all leaders. And so let's look at this from an organizational standpoint, and we're going to kind of skirt Karen's question, or she can come right out and explain more about it. I'm gonna leave that up to her. But one thing that came up this weekend, somebody said these organizations, and it's to your point too, Karen, are coming out with statements and policies. Have any of your teams, I know you're all doing a lot of team Zoom things and so forth, any of you coaches, organizational leaders come up with a policy for your individual team, as opposed to like the athletic department, you know, the school athletic department's been saying, oh, we don't stand for this, blah, blah. That's the first question. And then the second one is really, what does the policy lend itself to taking action? Because I think a policy without action is not going to be much use for anybody. And I'm going to leave that open. And Karen, if you want to start, because this is kind of a hot topic for you,
Sure.
please jump in.
So I am the girls program director for a club in California, Northern California. We're a member of the Northern California Junior Lacrosse Association. There's about 8,000 kids in the program total. There's a lot of clubs. I was told, I think it's, you know, one of the second largest clubs in the country, one of the youth organizations. So in our summer workshop at the end of the spring, which really wasn't much of a spring, we always go over the good, the bad, and, you know, statistics and stuff, and a discussion on racism and discrimination that was missing from the agenda. So there were several people, myself included, who wrote to the leadership, made phone calls to get that added on, and then there was a discussion about it in the kind of summer ending meetings. From that meeting, they decided that they needed a committee to look into the policies of our organization, everything from the reporting process to educational materials, game day policy. And the short version is we were upset that they hadn't really taken a stand, like made a statement in general for something that affects our kids a lot. So they wrote something which was, it was kind of a non-statement, you know. So the committee said that's not strong enough. You're actually not saying anything. It needs to include systemic racism. It needs to include this. And we were told it's going to the board to vote. And then in the next meeting, we were told that the board did not approve our language and they want to write it like this. And they took out systemic and they took out outright. They took out all the meaningful words with teeth. Come to find out, the board did not ever see our statement. So it was one person acting, you know, behind the cover of the board. And we found all this out. And, you know, now there's trust issues. There's kind of this lack of leadership. And the question becomes, they took it as a personal attack that there's no systemic racism within the NCJLA. Nationwide, that's one thing, but in the NCJLA, it's a problem. And I'm like, well, the fact that it's nationwide means it's in our program. No matter how you look at it, it's here. So it is not an attack on you. We're not saying that you are racist. You know, we're not saying that your stuff is overtly a problem, but it's in our program. The accusatory piece is that you're not acknowledging it. For me, the anger is that you won't acknowledge it. So now we are charged. I was given an agenda by someone who doesn't believe that there is systemic racism within our program and a very small scope of what I can do on this task force. So I'm struggling. We've addressed a lot of things. We've pushed back on a lot of things, and I have a call tonight where there's kind of a new liaison in place and everybody's having these conversations, but I feel deflated. I'm cautiously optimistic that I'm being heard on the call later on tonight, but I don't want to be on the committee anymore. This morning I said, I don't want to do it. I will put my energy to another thing where I feel like I can affect change. So this morning I was leaving the committee. And I just don't know if I should put my energy into helping make this better or if I should go to US Lacrosse and put my energy there, because our club they rely heavily on US Lacrosse for material. That was long. I said that was the short version, sorry.
Hey, you got to give the facts if we're going to give you some opinions. So go ahead, ladies. Danielle is ready to go. So.
I was just asking if you wanted our opinion whether you should stay on the committee.
Everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've had a similar conversation with my mom. She works at a predominantly white private school here in Baltimore, and she is Hispanic. And she has had so many issues with the diversity and inclusion at the school that she works for that they've asked her to be part of the committee, and she doesn't want to be part of it because she doesn't honestly think that they will listen to her or take what she says into account. So she feels like it's just a waste of time. They just want her there to say, you know, we have a Hispanic person on that committee. But I always argue with her that if you let those people kind of dictate your, I don't know, your involvement and kind of suppress your voice, then I think it would be really difficult to change what's going on. I think on one hand, you know, it's really frustrating that what the situation that's going on, that you're not being heard and that one person's taking control and that you don't really feel like you're going to have an impact. But I think the negative effects of not having you involved at all, and even if they don't change the statement to what you want, I think it's really important that you continue to be heard on that committee, and that you're not okay with what's going on, and that you don't surrender yourself to allow your voice to be suppressed. That's just my take on it. And it's easy for me to say, I'm not involved in the situation, obviously, but I think that happens a lot. I think that happens a lot with people of color, Black people, Indigenous people in positions of leadership. They let other people in power suppress their voice and not let them make real change because they feel like they have some power over them, you know, and as a result, change doesn't occur. And so I think it's important to keep allowing your voice to be heard, even if it doesn't lead to any success right now at this point.
Karen, quick question. What, if you can even tell us, what's the demographic breakdown for, are you being tokenized as is, like the one?
No,
Sorry.
the way that they picked the committee was a bit strange to me. They reached out to an outside person and told them that they could pick, I forget the exact numbers, but they could pick 2 or 3 people from the clubs, club members, and then there had to be 1 member from the board who would be like the liaison, and then 2 people, whoever he wanted. So you know, I was one of the people that raised my hand in the summer workshop that sure, I'll participate and help and look at things. So there's actually 2 of us that are club directors, or we're part of the clubs. The other people are outsiders. One is he's the communications director for like Oakland Unified Schools. One person who was invited to the table was Johnny Christmas, but he's doing like a lot of things, and like I said, we keep getting called to action, kind of every direction. So you have to prioritize. So while there's technically a mix, I don't know that it represents everything. And so we have, within the NCGLA, there's the Oakland Lacrosse Club. They don't pay for lacrosse. They don't pay for their equipment. We do education stuff for them. They are, they're given like some meals. And these are the kids that, some of them are homeless. They don't all have internet. You know, there's a wide range, but I would say they are the most needy club in the program. And I think that a lot of our policies and a lot of things that happen within the NCGLA are things that never let them catch up. And that's the point that we're trying to make about the systemic part of this conversation is the haves keep getting more and the have-nots, we just put barriers. And if they're not barriers, we don't do anything to help them move up. So that's been kind of my battle there. I live in a very, very wealthy area. So the community, the disparity between communities is pretty major.
Yeah, I think I feel you within, like, especially after your situation. I feel like once the trust is kind of broken, it's like, well, what can we do from that point moving forward? Because you already, I know from my own opinion, like, I've been kind of experiencing compassion fatigue, and I'm sure you are as well, just because, you know, when you're on Zooms nonstop, it takes part of your energy and your heart. And like, it's emotional every time that I talk about how to grow the game, but in a realistic way. So I feel you, and I feel like when that trust is gone, you're kind of like, what could I do now? I feel like what I've been doing, and I don't know if this is possible in this situation, but almost being as like open as you possibly can. And I'm sure you're always authentic, but like, are you almost able to call the person out? Because I feel like this is, Matt, you gave me permission to curse, so this is bullshit. So like, can you call the person out?
We had such a contentious meeting that the board had to watch the 2-hour recording because it was brutal. I kind of had to excuse myself and have like that frustration tear thing. I was like, nobody's gonna see me cry, you know. And I just clicked off for a minute.
Camera off.
But it was all anger. Nobody hurt my feelings, you know. It was like, this is so wrong. And I think the thing that frustrated me the most, and what I've noticed in all of the kind of arguments, is that the minorities are constantly put in a position where they have to defend their views, defend their logic, explain why. But generally speaking, the white people can have their belief and they don't have to defend it. It's just, and like, that's, I think, the most frustrating thing for me in all my conversations is I have to provide pages of logic, and one person can have one thought and they don't have to back it up and they don't have to own it.
That's something that's been, excuse me, it's something that's been prevalent in every conversation we've had, Karen, is someone has said something to that effect. Like, why do I have to give you 5 reasons for my opinion when you just blurt out a sentence and it's true? So first, I will echo Daniella's thoughts and say, please stay on the committee as much as it pains you. The only way to affect change, you know, it's, what's the saying? If not you, then who? You know, draw strength from this group, and I know they'll all be there for you if you need them to text them while you're talking or something, and text me. But you know, stay in it. Another thing is, some people will show their ignorance, and you can't. What's the Dr. Tina Opie gave us this nugget last week, and she said, it's the 20-60-20 rule. Everybody you meet falls into 20%, 60%, or 20%. Top 20 is your family, your husband, your children, people that are just rock solid. You don't have to worry about. That 60 is where a lot of people fall, where you're like, I don't know if I should spend the time on him or her, or, you know, should I be their friend? But then there's the bottom 20 that you just can't do a damn thing about. And you really just have to almost ignore, and kind of like, they're going to be themselves no matter what. So, you know, I thought that was really powerful because it is true. And I use the same kind of thing in my life. I just know that sometimes I look at like a tree. Sometimes people are, and this is from a Tyler Perry movie, believe it or not. Sometimes people in your life are leaves, and as soon as the wind breeze blows, they blow off and they fall away. Sometimes they're branches. As soon as you put a little weight on them, they break and crumble. And then there's those that are the roots, and those are the people that you want in your life that are your roots. So, and then it goes something like that. It's actually a really funny but true skit. So stay in the fight. And then the second thing is, if it is truly an open conversation about the subject of racism and systemic racism, and which it should be, because that's, you know, let's use this hot topic period of the day, then I would almost start off with just making a statement saying, just so you know where I'm coming from, to my contribution to this group is, as a person of color, history has shown that I have to give you a statement and then have 5 things backing it up, whereas a white person traditionally will make a statement and it's just believed. That's where I'm coming from in this committee. It's something that's feels very strong, and I just want everyone to know, when you kind of put it out there at first, So now moving forward in that conversation, I hope the people are smart enough to not open their mouths and question everything without them just saying, okay, that's her professional opinion and her contribution to this group. Because that's all it should be, just an opinion and a contribution to the group. I'll let the other ladies speak up.
I'm going to jump on board with the other two, Karen, and say that you definitely need to stay. My grandpa always had this thing where the creator puts you on the path where you're supposed to be. I think that you're on this path because you're meant to be there. As hard as it is, I don't think that the creator is not giving you anything that you can't handle. And I think all you have to do is keep speaking your truth and not be scared to do that. Just speak your truth. And at the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror and be proud of who you are. And I think that, because believe me, I've been in so many, incidences like you were. I'm like, why am I here? Why am I doing this to myself? Like what, and I felt like I haven't been heard too. And that's just even just as a woman, so I think it's up to you. And I think you do have the strength and you do have the support around you. And you just have to keep fighting and, keep going, go over their head, and I'm really interested to know as what the demographic is on the board. You know what I mean? That this kind of had to happen as well. Like, is it all just, like a strictly white board, or who is this guy and what is his end game and what is he trying to get out of this? I don't know. To me, you can't give up.
Yeah, sometimes you just need your posse to give you some more energy back. It's deflating to come through that call and then have my 7-year-old son see my husband and I having these talks, what's happening on TV, and we're trying to be really honest with him without, adding to his COVID anxiety. He said, well, he interchanges theory and hypothesis in the wrong way, but he says, I have a hypothesis. What if I paint my skin white and then go out? And he's 7. And I was like, I don't want to have to talk to him about like the color of our skin and then jump on a call and explain to people why this is such a big deal to me. I'm tired. But just being on with you guys has, given some energy. And I guess I was coming from a place of, I always follow through. I kind of find a way to get what I want. I find a way to persevere. I always have. But sometimes I just go through a different door. And, I was kind of wondering, I'm like, am I going to get through this way, or do I need to find another way? And maybe that still might be the case. And I will follow through tonight. And I did my research and I've educated myself even more. And I feel like a lawyer on some aspects, but I appreciate you guys saying what you said.
I like it. You got a support staff here. Tap into it. But let's talk about that. So, Kayla, what if I know you said your team does Zoom chats, I think, pretty regularly. How are those conversations gone? And have you felt the need to bring in somebody to facilitate like a real hardcore, I guess, deep conversation, or are you coaches being able to tap into it with your players?
Yeah, and well, not to go back to that, Karen, but I like, even if it's really difficult to feel like you're getting anywhere with where you're at with your organization, like I know from just like my own perspective, like hearing your struggle and hear you talk about it, like I feel like I'm in those positions, like I'm that board member, like I'm in a lot of positions where, like I'm making big decisions and have this privilege as a white person and all the, all the different teams and stuff I've been on. So like, I'm taking a lot from what you're saying too. Like, even if it doesn't directly affect your organization, like I know that just like really stuck with me. And to hear you guys echo that, but Matt, sorry, to your question, I think kind of like what Karen's saying, and I'm not feeling it from like any lived experience, but I know that like right now I feel like there's a pushback on wanting to talk about it a little bit. I think that there was definitely a time period where it was not an easy conversation. It was obviously really difficult, but it was like everyone's eyes were open. And I feel like now it's, we actually talked about this on a call the other day, but it's almost turning into like a political issue, and maybe it's a part of what you guys were talking about, like a white person says something and it's just perceived as a fact. But I think like the next part of where we're navigating as a team is like, and I don't really know the answer, so maybe you guys can help with that, but it's where it was like a whole team thing. Now it's like who wants to talk about this now, like who it's like not for everyone, I guess, anymore. I mean, it is, but not everyone is in a place where they can talk about it right now. So that's kind of where I've been at, and maybe what you're saying about having somebody come in would be helpful. But I think kind of what I've found is that like that bottom 20% you're talking about, and I'm not saying anybody on my team is that, but I think that just some people, you can't change their opinion. And I find that's the difficult part right now, is continuing the dialogue and the education piece and how it affects our team, but also like just dealing with that pushback issue.
Kayla,
Mira, how about you? Go ahead, Mira. Yep, I was going to call.
Yeah, I was just gonna toss a question out to everyone. Do you guys ever feel like it's being made a political issue now? I mean, I know it always was, but I feel like with this like residue, it's like now people, especially in the lacrosse community, are like, oh, maybe I shouldn't make a statement, or maybe I shouldn't be a part of this committee due to where I stand politically. I feel like a lot of people are like now prompting me to be like, because I'm voting a certain way, I can't stand with this, where in my opinion, like this is a human rights issue, but I also do think it's political. And I do think it comes down to the ballot in November, but that's just in my opinion. I'm saying that to you guys because I respect you all, but I don't like say that freely. It kind of depends on my audience. You know what I mean? Like if I'm trying to sway you, I'll be like, oh, it's actually not a political issue. It's a human rights issue. But like, I think it is. I don't know. What do you all think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it absolutely has become a political issue. And I think even more so in the lacrosse community, like whether we like it or not, the lacrosse community is predominantly a white driven, middle upper class, dominated sport. And I think that that's where you get a lot of, the perspectives in our community are maybe not, for the most part, I'd like to think their intention isn't negative, but I think they don't know better. They're ignorant to the types of issues that really exist because they're not surrounded by it. And so that brings you back to, what is the lacrosse community really willing to do to change this, to maybe take away from the fact that this might be a political issue? And what actions are we all willing to take with our teams or with the communities that we work in? Like, I'm almost tired of talking so much about it and not really hearing what action people are going to take to solve the issues. Like in one of the previous episodes, I think it was Dr. Tina Opie again, she was talking about how if institutions really value diversity and inclusion and really want to combat racism, then they're going to pay money for that to happen. And I don't see a team really making a statement. And like Kayla, like you were just saying, like you guys don't really know what to do anymore. And that's totally understandable because that's not your field of expertise, right? You haven't been trained to deal with these issues. So I think institutions, teams really need to start being like, okay, who can we hire that can really help us? We really care about diversity. Who can we hire that's going to give us action items that we can start taking to change the culture around the sport, you know, and around these issues, even though it's a predominantly white sport. Okay, well, what can we do that will make this not a political issue? Maybe there was something that happened in on the field. Like we've heard a lot of instances recently where people are coming forward and saying that they were called the N-word on the field. Well, that's a great opportunity to say, this isn't political. This is something that is impacting a kid that's just like your kid. This could have happened to your kid. You know, you're a parent too. Make it more personal, but really hire people that know what they're doing, and, you know, help create those action items that people can follow to change the landscape around the issue.
I'd also love to follow up, Kayla, on a couple of different levels of what you're talking about as a college coach. And you too, Mira, because so a couple of things happened at Syracuse when I was a player. We had a pretty diverse team when I was there. We had like 5 minorities on the team at the same time. So, woo! But we had a game where we had to walk into the dome and people had taped to the bus, they rolled up with their vans, actually beat Ghetto Lax and a couple of other, you know, things. And for us, we were kind of scrappy, you know, our thing was like, okay, fuck you. And like, I went out and probably scored 7 goals. Like I literally looked up my VHS and converted it so that I could be like, yup, that was the game. And that was just our attitude. And I called my coach within the last month, you know, and to say, hey, did this happen or am I making this up? Because we then embraced it and we started calling ourselves Ghetto Lax. That whole season we called ourselves Ghetto Lax. Like it was cool. Like we thought it was funny. And the one thing that she said to me was she didn't realize like how much some of these things were affecting us. And she feels like she maybe didn't do enough to protect us. So, you know, we had a long talk, you know, kind of about that. We have subsequently, the Black lacrosse players have reached out to Gary, you know, the coach at Syracuse, and just, you know, it's been a while since there's been some minority representation on the team, and kind of how you attack that. Removing obstacles is one thing, and you know, actively going to get it. But also, like within your team, I was thinking if I was a college coach, what would I be doing right now with my team? And making things relevant to people. And I think one of the easy things that we can do as women, you might, Kayla, you might not have experienced like the same way that we do in our skin, but I know you have experienced the same feelings because you are a woman, you know, and just making things relevant to your kids in a way that they understand the feeling. They might not understand like what it's like to be Black or but they have understood the feeling of, you know, being belittled or embarrassed or frustrated or left out, you know, and kind of attacking that way and just kind of remove those barriers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I've heard that before too. Just like the idea of trying to figure out a way to make it personal. Obviously, it's not, you know, we don't have any Black players, but trying to make it how do you make it personal to them? How, even if it's like a friend or a family member, and maybe not them exactly, but people are more likely to listen when you making it personal to them.
I like it. It's good advice. Mira, you look like you have something else to say.
Oh, yeah, I just one lingering thought. Zoom is so revealing, I forgot you can really see the tear strand. Yeah, my one thought was I was an African American Studies major at Michigan. I feel like there are so many, definitely you can hire somebody who's so experienced in D&I, but also I think, you know, at some of these world-class universities, like there are some amazing AFAM professors or Black Studies professors that I think like they would be just amped to go talk to a predominantly white team and really dig in and honestly like re-educate on like the roots of racism in this country is what I tell everybody. Like, why don't you start with the basics? And then like you know, I'm talking to Wagner next week, like then get somebody who's willing, that wants to talk about their Black experience. But again, I don't think it's like the role of us as Black people or biracial folks to go in and educate. But I think, you know, a professor, they make a career out of it. So that's just another slight thought I had.
You're reading my mind, because that's exactly what Doctors Opie, Tina, and Fred said last week. Was every campus, especially at the college level, has, I would think every school has some type of Black studies, history, something. Just go to that department and get a professor and start there. Tia and I had an interesting conversation this afternoon, because I was just kind of probing her on her life, and I think I might have shared this with some of you before. I just don't understand, and it's just the simple side of me, how a game that's a gift from Native Americans has become white Northeastern only. I'm like, that's just when I started playing in New Jersey, I was like, oh, okay, cool. This game is close to me. All right, then I just stuck with it. That's, to this day, I always think, you know, I'm closer to this game than my white counterparts. No offense to them, but you know, I find it just, the history, Black history, Native American history, it all helps to better the situation of today. And I think if people had a better understanding, and Tia, I'll let you run with that, because you really opened my eyes to a few things today as well. I muted you. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm just speaking from life experience here, but like I remember an Instagram post, because I follow a lot of lacrosse accounts, and there was this one play, I guess, or one drill where the people go and build the sticks. So they put all their sticks up in a row, and then they so they're building a teepee. And then they make the kids dance around and do the war hoops around the teepee. So a lacrosse camp had did that, and man, did that make my blood boil, you know, and everything. Because here I'm like, you know what? Do you know where this game came from? You know, did you know? So I reached out to the lady and to the camp, and she had no idea that lacrosse was from, you know, it was a Haudenosaunee game, and she thought that it was made up by white people in Baltimore. That's what she really thought. So I think I'm at the point where I feel in my life, like I said, there isn't anything that I haven't heard derogatory towards me or the people that I love. I'm at the point now where I'm all for education. So if somebody calls me or somebody wants to know, you know, where the game came from and what it means to me and to know my people, I'm all for it, because I just feel like when you know better, you do better. And if I can just change one person's mind or fill in that history, and then there's one better person. So, and that's kind of what I've taught. And like I said, I talk a lot about my daughter, because, you know, she went to an all-white team, and that's what I've told her, you know, and from that, and from her sharing her experiences, she's gotten calls from her teammates asking her, because they're learning about, especially in the Western New York, the New York area, you learn about the Iroquois people, which I do not like that word at all. But so they learn about the Iroquois Confederacy, and they've said, hey, Kimara, like, can we talk to you? Can we talk to your mom? Because we have this report to do. And they would always say, like, you told us way more than what the teacher told us. And we got an A on our report because we talked to an actual Iroquois person. So me, I just kind of, that's something that I love to do. I'm really very proud of who I am, and my upbringing, and you know, my family and how I've been raised. So I am all for, you know, sharing what I know, and my husband's been the same way. So and we're teaching our kids to do that as well. So yeah, that's all. Was there anything else you wanted me to touch on, Matt?
I just keep going. No, I mean, go ahead. Whoops.
Even the word Iroquois, like I said, like the word Iroquois is a derogatory term. Like that was given to us, I heard, by the French, and it means that they eat people. And so like I never ever refer to myself as an Iroquois person. I'll make reference to it, but really what Haudenosaunee means is people of the Longhouse. And so that's something that I always carry. But first of all, before that, I am Gayogwanga Otahione, which is a Cayuga wolf. So that's what I am first, because that's what we carry on. And then all of the nations are a part of the Confederacy. So that's how I was been raised to look at myself. So yeah, it's like nails on the chalkboard when I hear Iroquois.
And then, since we're on this and you're educating us, and I love this, why is Iroquois used now then, or is it?
So the men started it 30 years ago, and I'm not sure what their understanding was as to why they use that word. I guess maybe it's kind of like I read somewhere when people have, like, those ethnic names, or like my husband, his name is Haudenosaunee, and that means clears the sky. So there's a lot of people in my community, and one of our great players, Awahio Thomas, and then we have what Tawi Bomberry. So a lot of our people are, using their names, their native names, and that's pretty predominant in our community. So a lot of times, like, I think you have to be proud, and you have to make people say the name. You know what I mean? To make them say that name properly. So, I don't know why they chose that, but to me, it's not a true representation of us and of who we are.
Right, and this is a perfect example of not every Native person, Black person knows all things history, and that's not a knock. It's just true, I learn something every week. We have these conversations, and I was invited to a different one. Who is that? I don't care.
And I have a picture of my kids with Karen's son.
Syracuse alum. I was outnumbered, like really outnumbered.
That's great.
Throw that in there.
I love it.
And then your son is named after a Haudenosaunee. Karen's son is actually, so I was raised with Cam Bomberry, who was like kind of one of the frontiermen of getting our boys and blazing that path for them to go to college and to get higher education. His name was Cam Bomberry, and he was a good friend of Karen's husband, and that's who they named their son after. Mm-hmm. Small world.
Small world. Small world.
He got his first little sticks, when he was just born, and it meant a lot to us.
That's neat. Yeah. Let's circle back. But any organization would do itself justice to find an outside facilitator, as they call them. And there are definitely people there. Harry and Thomas Alford actually do it as well. They're doing talks with groups. They started Maryland grads, and they went back to Maryland and started there. And Harry said last week that he's done a few of those. So there's groups out there. Somebody said to me, they said if a team doesn't have some proper education and policies in place, they're just a time bomb waiting to happen. And I thought, that's pretty true, because you really can't burp these days on a team without it being on social media. Whatever that was, it the women's team it was probably 2019 season when they were on their bus singing a song. These kids don't know. Everything's on the internet within 5 minutes. So having those education pieces, I think, is vital. But you're right. They have to want to do it too. Sometimes you have to make them, maybe, but they do have to want to learn and get better. So I'm going to open up the floor. If you guys have a subject that's been bugging you or anything, I know, just speak up.
I have a question. So just based on conversations I've been hearing over the past few weeks, and then Tia, with your comments at the beginning of your daughter's experiences playing on all white teams and how she was treated and the types of questions that she would get and all that, I guess if I had a child who was Black or Indigenous, I don't think I would send my my kid to play lacrosse, honestly, right now, with the way that the community is. And I just want to know what other people's take is on that and what we can do to kind of change that narrative. I think it came up in one of your previous conversations, Matt, too, about how the environment can be so hostile within your team itself, and also with the referees, like you were saying, Tia, with coaches. And I think it can be have such a negative impact on a Black person, Indigenous person, or person of color, that is it even worth playing lacrosse? Why won't you I love lacrosse, but why not put your kid in another sport, basketball, football?
I don't think it matters. I think it'll follow you, wherever you go. We've experienced it in hockey. My sisters played basketball. I played basketball. It doesn't really matter. And I think that is just because, to me, I come from we're not near huge cities, but we've kind of had conflict with the cities around us. And so that's always something that we've had to battle, and I remember my son was 6 when this little boy come up to him and said, "You're a dirty Indian." And he goes, "I just took a shower. You stink, not me." So he didn't understand that he was meaning he's dirty. He thought he wasn't clean. You know what I mean? So there's that innocence in all of that. So it is really tough to teach your kids racism and how to deal with it at a young age, and who wants to do that at 7? But it's almost like you're going to run into it eventually. Should you run into it at 7? No way. But it's almost kind of like building that thick skin. And I even feel gross saying that. You know what I mean? That's something that we have to do as people, is just to develop that thick skin. But I mean, it's going to happen to you sooner or later. And I know even a couple of mothers who will not take their kids to our lacrosse games, our men's games, our men's box games here, because things get racial and everything like that. So I know that mothers even refuse to take their kids to games because it's even worse, because they hear it in the crowd. So I just think you're going to run into it. Feel like you're going to run into it sooner or later.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, because I think I've felt like recently I've been trying to say, I can't wait for the moment when little Black girls are looking in the pro league or, on the US team, and they can see people that look like them, and, they feel inspired and they want to play to that level. And yeah, I was coaching a private lesson the other day with a 6-year-old, and the mom called me up and she was like, "I just want to know your qualifications. Have you played lacrosse before?" And I was like, yes, I've dabbled in lacrosse. And it was really, I was cracking up, because also when she was my little girl is 6, I was like, I mean, your little girl's going to be a beast goalie. I started playing way later. So let's whip out the MVP card already. But anyway, the little kid, when she was in the lesson, super distracted a ton. She kept asking me if I liked chocolate chip cookies over chocolate cake. And so her mind was in a completely different place, and she was just staring at me. And I was like, "Dude, what's up?" And she was like, "Well, when my mom said I was going to get a coach, I thought she would have blonde hair, blue eyes, and way lighter skin than you." And I was just like, this kid is reading into my freaking soul. Has she been in the background of talking to teammates and shit? I was just like, this is unreal. But I think that I bring that up only because it my response to her was, well, I think the beauty of this game is that anyone can play it. People that look like you, that look like me, that have darker skin, that don't have blonde hair or blue eyes. And it's a sport for everyone. And it's awesome that I can be able to coach you. And, I was like, do you have other friends that look like me, that don't necessarily play lacrosse, but that look like me? And she was like, well, yeah, I have a friend that looks like you with curly hair and kind of a fro, but she's way shorter and sticks her hand out at 3 feet tall. But yeah, I think it was moments like that kind of inspire me to, want to keep coaching kids like that. And also be the coach that's actually a person of color that's kind of changing this girl's mind.
Definitely. I think that's super important. But I guess, I don't know, what I'm really wondering is, what can we do to change? I think it's great that we want to continue to be involved and that we should continue to be involved in the sport. But what can we do to kind of change the hostile environment that I think is so prevalent, especially like starting at the youth level and then following through? Like even the Mexican national team, the men's team, they were called beaners at the World Cup in Israel. And like some of those players don't even want to play lacrosse anymore. And I think that that happens at all different levels. And I think that it's a huge problem. I don't think it's unique to lacrosse, but I think that there's a high prevalence of that happening. And I guess, I don't know, I just have been wondering what can we be doing to change that, starting with coaches, with refs at the youth level, you know?
Well, can I answer your question with a question? Because on my lovely task force that I'm on, I've been like really searching for things that are not, that people couldn't say is too burdensome to learn, and activities that coaches and players can use like kind of while they're on the field in the moment, phone accessible, things that coaches can really use. And I have found a couple of things that I think would be worthwhile, but have you guys like found, is there an organization or a program that you think works really well as an educational tool, or just some more resources for families? Because I know in my club, like the leadership they have is me and my husband Brian. Like they're going to get pounded with this information, and we even looked at our own stuff and we're like, here's where our systems are holding people back, and we're going to address it. But to convince an 8,000 person club in the NCAA, this is why I think these resources are important and that they're usable. I'm supposed to present something to the board. So if you guys have anything that you have found that you really like, that's both for parent education and player education and coach education, that would be helpful. But it's a question.
Yeah, and no, it needs to start, and I think somebody touched on it. It has to start at the top. It has to start with I run tournaments, so I need to, if I run a tournament, I need to be responsible for how that tournament's portrayed, how it's run, give my referees, which they do get, the power if they come up with a racial slur. I just have zero tolerance. I go, your whole team's gone. Same thing. I use the same rule for fighting. And parents, oh, but my kid. I'm like, your kid signed the waiver. It says if your team is involved in a fight, your entire team is gone. And the coaches most of the coaches I'm familiar with and I get to know as they're registering stuff, and I remind them of it, and they say, oh yeah, that's a rough one. I go, there shouldn't be any fighting. They're middle school and high school kids. Man, grow up. But it's got to start at the top. It's there are no parents. Your group is asking you an impossible question, I think, in this day and age, because as someone said earlier, there are a number of lanes. I say this every week. There's a number of lanes to get to this end goal, and our lane right now is having a conversation. You may hang up and have another lane with a friend where it's we decide to read this or watch this short film or something. So there's so many avenues to get there. I don't think an organization of that size or any size is going to do any good taking the stance of, well, we don't want it to be cumbersome, but we want our people to learn and be aware. That's just not going to happen. Stay on the committee. Don't take that as but how the hell are you going to come up with something that, so what do you got? 50 to 100 coaches can all agree on that's usable? I mean,
you know, we the past, they've done they're quiet, they're subtle.
Slur.
beautifulness the last time. Said to me, and the mom like got super defensive first, and then I didn't even get back to my house and she texted me and it was like, I just want you to know that like this isn't going to be in the publicized part, right, Matt?
No, I might put it in there. Might be a highlight. Could be a teaser. Go ahead.
I'm like still paranoid, man. Like she was literally like, she sent me a picture of the Barbies and was like, oh, my daughter picked out these Barbies and there's like a black Barbie, a light-skinned Barbie, and a white Barbie. And I'm like, oh, love the diversity. Like, and I'm like, it was craziness.
Wow.
That's not overcompensation right there.
Anyway, it just shows, the mom is lovely too, but it's just like different people's growing edges of tourism and everything.
Well, your first.
Nice way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, I said to Karen, Karen and I were talking about her situation on Saturday for like an hour and a half, but I said, it's unfortunate that the first thing you get is denial, but that is the first step in the whole process. It's denial. And if they have a group of 8,000 people in Northern California, which I've been to, which is a very diverse area, even though they are in the high income zone and predominantly white neighborhoods, they're for sure got problems because she works with the Oakland group. And she didn't expand on it too much, but that Oakland group is mostly Hispanic kids. And they're low income, and she didn't mention low income, and the ones, I forget what it's called here. I think it's Title I school, stuff like that, where you gotta get meals and lunches and stuff. So shit's happening, we know it for sure. And it's sad that the group would deny, like be in such denial from the jump. And this is like, again, it's the perfect time to have these conversations. You can't go wrong. You really can't.
I thought it was crazy that it was all of this over a written policy. Like, we're not even talking about anything beyond words. Like, it's crazy.
Like, they couldn't even get off the start. Like, that's just the start. Have a written policy. Like, everybody's putting out written. That's why I mentioned in the beginning. Like, it's like, write a policy.
Like, we're not even talking about like a racist coach. How do you deal with what happened to this? Like, you're just talking about what to put in your policy. Like, I find it's, and what she's going through for just that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. There's a group on Instagram. You guys have probably seen it. The Black at the Instagrams. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So it's like Black at whatever school. So it's for like white predominantly white private schools. And there's one for like the tri-school area here in Baltimore. And it's like all the different experiences that Black people or people of color have had in those communities. And they post on Instagram. And so this group like posts them. And so one of the groups posted a letter that was a response from the administration of one of the schools to the group. And it's a parent with their name is attached to the letter. It's like ridiculous. And the letter is all about how if anyone's marginalized, it's the white students, because all these minority groups exist at the school, and how like they're mistreated and discriminated against, and how like Black kids are given more opportunity. Black kids and minorities are given more opportunities than all the white kids, and they get scholarships and like all this stuff. And it's like, how can you be educated and be so ignorant?
Oh my
Which
God.
is just mind-boggling. And obviously like that's not the only parent that thinks that. There's obviously like a lot more parents that think that way. But the fact that this parent had the audacity to even attach your name to that letter, it's like, it's just embarrassing that you are that ignorant, you know?
I give her credit for putting her name on it, because obviously a nameless submission is always just that. But
And so
it's nice that she was able to put herself on blast too, though.
yeah, everyone's like trolling her now on like delete all her social media.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love the graphic, the Black Lives Matter graphic where they have all the fists of different colors.
Yeah.
And they're basically trying to say like, this is our group. I think that's a very strong one that should be repeated every day, because that's all they're asking for. These are educated people looking for just equality, not more.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
All right. I gotta go shovel the salmon. So.
Shovel.
Love everyone. Matt, you better cut that part out, dude.
Yeah, this was off the script.
Which part?
script,
I love it. I love the doll thing. We got to use that as a teaser.
Oh my God.
That'd be the best teaser ever. So the woman came to me with an array of dolls. And
I
said,
just
"I'm
love
not
that I'm
racist."
commenting on your bald head. Here's my dad. You got a little bandana on right now.
Oh, what's he doing covering it up?
That's right. All right. Peace and love, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thanks,
Dad.
Matt.
All right,
Thanks,
ladies.
Matt.
Pose a question to the panel by emailing us at ot@emwf.org. We'd love to hear from you.